First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha Kodesh. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Acts, the 10th chapter. There was a certain man in Caesarea called Cornelius, a centurion of the band called the Italian band. So Cornelius was basically one in the Roman army. And Cornelius was an Israelite, but he is what we would call an Israelite foreigner, and likely didn't look like your typical average looking Israelite. And so most people considered him likely at that time to, be of another nation, though he was an Israelite. Okay. And that's why he was obviously believing, able to receive of the Holy Spirit. But the chapter is going to go more into it. Let's read this in, another translation. It says here, NLT, in Caesarea there lived a Roman army officer named Cornelius, who was a captain of the Italian regiment. Now, the centurion, I believe, is one over a certain amount of men. Okay, and an officer in the Roman army, the captain of 100 men, right? A centurion. Like you have the word century, which means 100 years. A devout man, and one that feared God. Let's look into that word devout. Pious, dutiful. And that's the thing about the spirit, is that, it doesn't matter. The flesh, the skin, the voice, the hair, these can all be, deceived, right? They can deceive the eyes, they can deceive the ears, the mind. But the spirit always remains true. Interestingly enough, that's why the Lord said that the Father seeketh those that are going to worship him in spirit and in truth. Okay, that's regardless of what you look like, because the Lord, he doesn't really care much about the flesh, right? It's not really much about what you look like per se, but more so about what type of spirit you have. So it says here, and one that feared God with all his house. So his whole household feared the Lord, and gave much alms to the people, and prayed to God always. He saw in a vision, evidently about the 9th hour of the day, which is about 3 p.m. in the afternoon, or getting towards the evening, an angel of God coming in to him and saying unto him, Cornelius. And let's go into that name, Cornelius. What does it say here? I think it says like what, of a horn? Yeah, of a horn. A Roman centurion of the Italian cohort. Yep. Okay. Interesting. So it says here, and when he looked on him, he was afraid. When he saw the angel, he was afraid, and said, What is it, Lord? And he said unto him, Thy prayers and thine alms are come up for a memorial before God. So your prayers and alms, the Lord has seen them, right? They're likened unto an offering, right? That has come up before him. And now send men to Joppa and call for one Simon, whose surname is Peter. He lodgeth with one Simon a tanner, whose house is by the seaside. He shall tell thee what thou oughtest to do. And when the angel which spake unto Cornelius was departed, he called 2 of his household servants, and a devout soldier of them that waited on him continually. So one of his faithful soldiers, he called them along with his 2 household servants, and sent them to go and get Peter. And when he had declared all these things unto them, he sent them to Joppa. On the morrow, as they went on their journey and drew nigh unto the city, Peter went up upon the housetop to pray about the 6th hour. So about, midday, right, 12 noon. And the housetop looks something like, it's an actual open area, like a rooftop, right? Housetop, Bible times. So you could go there, you could sit, you could talk, you could eat, you could pray, like this, right? It's an actual open area up top over there. So that's where Peter went to pray. And he became very hungry and would have eaten. But while they made ready, he fell into a trance, and saw heaven opened, and a certain vessel descended onto him. And as it had been a great sheet knit at the four corners and let down to the earth. So he saw this like sheet that had like knots on the four corners, and it just descended down right there in front of him, wherein were all manner of four-footed beasts of the earth, and wild beasts, and creeping things, and fowls of the air. So this included things that were, all manner of animals, right? Things that were looked at as clean and unclean. All these things are in this sheet. And there came a voice to him, Rise, Peter, kill and eat. But Peter said, Not so, Lord, for I have never eaten anything that is common or unclean. And the voice spake unto him again the second time, What God hath cleansed, that call not thou common. This was done thrice, 3 times, and the vessel was received up again into heaven. Now you'll have certain people that will try to use this to justify and say, "Oh, look, see, this is the proof that you can eat whatever you want. You don't have to worry about eating pork or any abominable foods." That's absolutely not what it's talking about. The all manner of beasts and so on that Peter saw was a representation of Israelites. Okay, but these were Israelites that looked like, that would look like people of different nations. They would look like, because Israel considered the heathens to be unclean, right? Uncircumcised, unclean. So they were very, very stringent, at least at this time. Limitations on what you could and could not do, and how you could and could not associate with those of another nation. So when Peter saw these animals here, he thought, no, well, these are unclean animals. I'm not going to eat that. But they represented Israelites that looked like all different nations, right? Israelite foreigners that the Lord would sanctify, and they would believe in this word. That's why he told them, what the Lord has cleansed, call not thou common. It says here, and while Peter doubted in himself what this vision which he had seen should mean, behold, the men which were sent from Cornelius had made inquiry for Simon's house, and stood before the gate. So as he was wondering, like, what is this about? Right then and there, those that Cornelius sent had made their way there. And now they were asking, we're looking for Simon Peter, or as it says, for Simon's house. There we go. So they were asking for directions to Simon, likely the tanner, because that was the place where Peter was dwelling. And called and asked whether Simon, which was surnamed Peter, was lodged there. While Peter thought on the vision, the Spirit said unto him, Behold, 3 men seek thee. Arise therefore, and get thee down, and go with them, doubting nothing, for I have sent them. So don't worry about it. It's nothing evil that's going to come of it. I sent them here. So you just go with them. Then Peter went down to the men which were sent unto him from Cornelius, and said, Behold, I am he whom ye seek. What is the cause wherefore ye are come? And they said, Cornelius the centurion, a just man, and one that feareth God, and of good report among all the nation of the Jews, was warned from God by an holy angel to send for thee into his house, and to hear words of thee. And let's go into that word warn. Is it that? Okay, here we go. Right, so it says here, to advise or consult. Makes sense. To give response to, divine command. So less of like, how you think of a typical warning, and more in the sense of, as we just mentioned, advise or consult or instruct, right? He was instructed from the Lord by an angel to come and get Peter and listen to what Peter would have to say to him. Then called he them in and lodged them, because it was now, probably a little too late for them to travel all the way back. And Peter was hungry. He hadn't eaten yet. So he brought them in. He said, you just stay here tonight and then tomorrow, right? As it says, and on the morrow, Peter went away with them, and certain brethren from Joppa accompanied him. And the morrow after, they entered into Caesarea, and Cornelius waited for them, and had called together his kinsmen and near friends. So he went in there, and they were, quite the audience. And as Peter was coming in, Cornelius met him and fell down at his feet and worshipped him. Now, this wasn't in the sense of like, oh, Peter, you're the Most High, I'm going to offer sacrifices unto you, but it was more like reverencing him. But Peter took him up, saying, stand up. I myself also am a man. So you don't need to do all that. I'm a man just like you. And as he talked with him, he went in and found many that were come together. And he said unto them, ye know how that it is an unlawful thing for a man that is a Jew to keep company or come unto one of another nation. But God hath shewed me that I should not call any man common or unclean. See, so that's why I mentioned earlier, in the beginning, and let's actually go into that word nation here. It says of another nation. Alopholos, foreign, right? It says here, i.e. especially Gentile, or one of another nation. But here's the thing. Cornelius, and it's likely that Peter said this because Cornelius looked like it, and they probably thought that he was one of another nation, but he was a natural Israelite through the Spirit. Okay? So that's why Peter is speaking this way, saying, but the Lord actually showed me not to call any man common or unclean. So at this point, he understood, right? The Lord had it made sense to him now. Oh, this is what that vision that I saw meant. That's why the Lord said, don't call anything that I've cleansed common. Therefore came I unto you without gainsaying. So Cornelius would have been an example of one of those beasts that were in that sheet that the Lord told Peter, rise, kill and eat, not like literally to kill and eat. Therefore came I unto you without gainsaying, as soon as I was sent for. I asked therefore, for what intent have ye sent for me? And Cornelius said, 4 days ago I was fasting until this hour, and at the 9th hour I prayed in my house. And behold, a man stood before me in bright clothing, and said, Cornelius, thy prayer is heard, and thine alms are had in remembrance in the sight of God. Send therefore to Joppa, and call hither Simon, whose surname is Peter. He is lodged in the house of one Simon, a tanner by the seaside, who, when he cometh, shall speak unto thee. Immediately therefore I sent to thee, and thou hast well done that thou art come. Now therefore are we all here present before God to hear all things that are commanded thee of God. Then Peter opened his mouth and said, of a truth I perceive that God is no respecter of persons, but in every nation he that feareth him and worketh righteousness is accepted with him. What this means is, and the reason he said it like this, whether he understood the deeper meaning of it or not, in every nation he that feareth him and worketh righteousness is accepted of him. In every nation, those that would fear the Lord and work righteousness are Israelites that are scattered in those nations. When you go all the way back to Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, the Lord mentioned that he would scatter Israel throughout all nations and many other precepts. So those Israelites that were in those other nations would be the ones that would fear the Lord and work that righteousness. And those are the ones that the Lord accepts. The word which God sent unto the children of Israel, preaching peace by Yahushua HaMashiach, he is Lord of all. That word I say ye know, which was published throughout all Judea, and began from Galilee after the baptism which John preached, how God anointed Yahushua of Nazareth with the Holy Spirit and with power, who went about doing good and healing all that were oppressed of the devil, right? Those that were plagued, for God was with him. I remember he mentioned about that woman whose back was basically bent for so long, and he mentioned that she was basically like bound of Satan, and he loosed her, just like how those wicked Pharisees that try to say, look, you're doing work on the Sabbath, you're going off. And he said, don't you loose your asses to go and water them, right? Give them water on the Sabbath. And is it wrong that I loose her from this being bound of this infirmity? And we are witnesses of all things which he did both in the land of the Jews and in Jerusalem, whom they slew and hanged on a tree. Him God raised up the third day and shewed him openly. So they saw Yahushua after he was risen, not to all the people, but unto witnesses chosen before of God, even to us. So Yahushua revealed himself to those that the Lord had already set up that he should reveal himself to. So not to everybody. Even to us who did eat and drink with him after he rose from the dead. And he commanded us to preach unto the people and to testify that it is he which was ordained of God to be the judge of quick and dead, that is, of those that are alive and those that are dead. That was the power of Yahushua to be able to judge, to give life, to take life, all of those. All that came under the power of Yahushua. To him give all the prophets witness that through his name whosoever believeth in him shall receive remission of sins, right? To have their sins pardoned. And they gave witness through the visions that they saw and the things they wrote and prophesied concerning him. While Peter yet spake these words, the Holy Spirit fell on all them which heard the word. You think the Holy Spirit is going to fall on heathens? No. And they of the circumcision which believed were astonished. So those that came with Peter, right, they were of the circumcision, Israelites that knew they were Israelites, they were part of all of that. They were astonished because they were like, they didn't expect that. As many as came with Peter, because that on the Gentiles also was poured out the gift of the Holy Spirit. And these Gentiles were Israelite foreigners, okay? Israelites that were considered Gentiles of the Israelites that were of the circumcision, but they were not actually Gentiles, meaning their lineage goes back to Israelites. So let's see what we have here for the word Gentiles. A multitude associated with living together. Cool. A tribe, nation, people, group. In the Old Testament, foreign nations not worshiping the true God, pagans, Gentiles. Paul uses the term for Gentile Christians. So the blue letter goes, well, it's using it, incorrectly here. And that's okay because it's called the mystery of the Gentiles for a reason. So even those that comprised some of this information here were not privy to that knowledge, but we are. So the word Gentiles here, it's really talking about Israelites. That's why we went through the book of Maccabees that gave you the history of what happened that led to a large amount of Israelites becoming quote unquote Gentiles. And I put quote unquote because they didn't become Gentiles by flesh, by lineage. They were still Israelites, but the way they lived, how they started to look, this language they spoke, the customs they kept, all of those things would make them really almost unrecognizable or indistinguishable from the native Gentiles, except for their spirit. Okay. And their spirit and in believing in Yahushua would be the deciding or distinguishing factor here. So here, though they were called Gentiles, these were actually Israelites they were Israelite foreigners. They looked like those of another nation, but they believed. And that's why the Holy Spirit came upon them. So it says here that on the Gentiles also was poured out the gift of the Holy Spirit. For they heard them speak with tongues and magnify God. Then answered Peter. So that they were able to confirm the Holy Spirit was upon them because they heard them speaking in different languages. Then answered Peter, can any man forbid water, that these should not be baptized, which have received the Holy Spirit as well as we? So he was suggesting that they baptize them. NLT, can anyone object to their being baptized now that they have received the Holy Spirit just as we did? So he's like, this is all the proof you need. Because by receiving the Holy Spirit, the Most High has approved them. And he commanded them to be baptized in the name of the Lord. Then prayed they him to tarry certain days. So they basically beseeched him to stay a little longer with them. And that brings us to the end of the book of Acts, the 10th chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Recha Kodesh. Until next time, Shalom.